Hey everyone, welcome. We're about to dive into a huge concept in project management, and it's one that can make or break you on the CAPM exam. We're talking about planning project iterations. So let's get right into it and see how this little shift in thinking can make a massive difference.
So, here's the deal with the adaptive world. We don't just create one giant perfect plan and follow it blindly. Nope. Instead, projects get built piece by piece through these small, structured cycles we call iterations. Each one delivers real, usable value. It's a totally different way of looking at things.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to know the definition of iteration, but it's a whole other ballgame to actually apply that knowledge when you're staring at a tricky exam question. Look, this is where so many people get stuck. They know the words, but they can't quite connect the dots. They're not sure how iterations really break a project down or what the real trade-offs are. And a big one is, what do you do with old-school tools like a work breakdown structure? This confusion is exactly where valuable points get lost on the exam.
So how do you get past that? Well, you use a framework, one that's designed to help you spot the patterns behind the questions the CAPM exam is going to throw at you. Let's walk through a little preview of what I mean.
First things first, we need to know the basic building block. An iteration, you'll often hear it called a sprint, is just a short, set amount of time. Think 2 to 4 weeks, usually. In that little time box, the team's entire goal is to complete and deliver a working piece of the project. It's this nice, neat little cycle of planning, doing, and then checking your work.
Okay, so let's put this into practice. This is the kind of scenario you're going to see. The exam wants you to identify the method they're describing. See? It's not about memorizing a definition. It's about recognizing the concept in action.
Now, this is where things get really interesting because everything has trade-offs. On the plus side, you get constant feedback and you can be super flexible. That's fantastic. But the flip side, you're dealing with constant changes and it can be pretty intense on your team and resources. The exam absolutely loves to test whether you understand this balance.
Let's try another one. Notice how this question isn't just asking for a definition. It's describing a situation. You get the benefit of frequent changes, but you also have the challenge of potential confusion. It's asking you to recognize the fingerprints of an iterative approach.
So a question I get all the time is, what happens to traditional tools like the work breakdown structure, the WBS? Do we just throw it in the trash? Absolutely not. We adapt it. You still figure out your big deliverables. You still break them down into tasks, but then you group and prioritize those tasks to fit into your short iteration cycles.
And boom, here's a perfect example in an exam scenario. The test won't ask you to build a WBS from scratch. It'll describe a manager using one in a clever, adaptive way, and it's your job to know what that strategy is called. You have to remember, in adaptive projects, scope isn't some stone tablet that never changes. It's a living, breathing thing. It gets fed by things like user stories, a prioritized backlog, and probably the most important one, non-stop feedback from your stakeholders.
Are you starting to see the pattern here? The scenario describes an action the team is reviewing and adjusting based on feedback, and you just have to name the approach. This is the exact skill you need to sharpen for the exam. How we track progress is also worlds apart. Predictive projects are always asking, are we on schedule? Are we sticking to the plan? But adaptive projects ask a totally different question. How much did we actually get done in the last cycle? And what does that tell us about our next one? It's about progress, not just process. And this right here is a classic tool for that, the Burndown chart. It's a super simple but really powerful visual. It shows the whole team exactly how much work is left and if they're on pace to finish it in time. It's all about making progress visible.
Okay, one last scenario just to really nail this down. This question is designed to see if you can spot the difference between tracking against a rigid schedule versus tracking based on actual completed work. Getting this distinction right is absolutely crucial.
So we've looked at all these different pieces, the iterations, the trade-offs, the tracking. What's the one big idea that ties it all together?
This is the heart of it all. It's not just about being agile for the sake of it. It's about being obsessed with delivering real, working value, little by little, while being smart enough to adjust your plan based on what you learn. If you can get this one principle deep in your bones, you are already halfway there.
All right, so let's bring it all home. What does all of this mean for you and your goal of crushing the CAPM exam?
Look, anyone can read you definitions from a textbook, but the CAPM exam is not a vocabulary quiz. It's way more than that. What we do is train you to see the patterns.
When you can look at a confusing paragraph and immediately spot the underlying concept being tested, whether it's about trade-offs or tracking, that's when you know you're ready.
Seriously, it all comes down to this. On exam day, understanding how a team is working is the key. Once you can identify the how, the right answer just pops out at you.
So what you've seen here is just a tiny peek at this method for mastering the exam. If you're ready to go beyond just memorizing terms and want to start truly recognizing the patterns of project management, well, the full framework is waiting for you inside.